Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's Full Press NFL Sunday, once again on a Saturday, our final episode of the regular season. Week 18 is upon us. Saturday, we have two games kicking off tonight, including the Chiefs and Raiders, getting us all started at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, Braden, good afternoon, and welcome to the final week of the regular season. We're finally here.
Yeah, good afternoon to you. It's definitely kind of one of those weeks where it seems like anything can happen, and it's always kind of that mantra of any given Sunday. But I know we're gonna do our picks later. There was a lot of them that I just don't have 100% confidence in. So feels like it could definitely be a chaotic week here.
Yeah, and look, obviously, it's already been a chaotic week leading up to this point. The last time we spoke, we were anticipating a Monday Night Football game between the Bills and the Bengals. Obviously, only about a portion of the first quarter of that game got played because the Damar Hamlin situation. Now, the good news is he seems to be well on the path to recovery. So, I mean, the tone is starting to shift from being less worried to being far more optimistic, and it's a great thing to have happened because it really it was a situation that really was unprecedented in the, I say, modern era, and by that I mean probably the 21st century, and more so in the social media era. We've seen situations where, and I brought this up on FPC radio, where we've seen Chris Pronger, very similar situation in the sense that he got hit in the chest and suffered some. As far as we're assuming, this is the same situation that he suffered. However, that was about 1998, and you didn't have iPhones and social media and Twitter and everything that's here now, and it has allowed us to kind of see this unfold almost minute by minute. Every update was pretty much conveyed as soon as it came out to everyone watching. So, it was great to see the reaction of everyone and how everyone kind of came together. It was great to see people donate money to his GoFundMe for his charity, which last I saw was over 8 million now, and that's absurd. So, yeah, I mean it's great, but now we shift our focus, not shifting away from him, but more so on the games that have to be played now because that's just it. There are a lot of ramifications from that game not being played, and again, this is a circumstance beyond anyone's control. This wasn't anything that could have been prevented. It was just unfortunately a freak accident and a freak chain of events. But the reality of it is, it kind of created this issue for the NFL that really I don't think anyone ever planned for, and that is, how do you take this situation? And the situation in and of itself was unprecedented, at least in the NFL, and like I said, at least in this modern, in the 21st century. But on top of that, the game itself and the playoff ramifications that stemmed from that situation, you couldn't have had more of a perfect storm, so to speak, of circumstances that the NFL had to deal with. And the reality of it is, any situation or any solution that they came up with was not going to be perfect. And in a lot of ways, you're going to look at and find maybe a lot of flaws. And maybe these flaws are going to be more present or more apparent after the fact. But right now, we're dealing with a situation in the AFC primarily involving the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, the three teams that have really separated themselves this season in that conference. And I'm not going to sit here and say I hate the solution, Braden, but I don't know if the biggest concern for me was the availability of home field advantage. I think it was more so the bye week. So I don't mind the neutral site championship game. I just think that's a problem that didn't need to be solved.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I think it's just easy to kind of wait and see what happens this weekend before kind of looking into the top three seeds. But it's kind of one of those situations, I guess, where I guess with the bye week, you kind of look at what happened with the situation in Cincinnati and with Buffalo, kind of getting themselves back on track and kind of just readjusting themselves, from a mental standpoint. And I think there's just something, I think, with the bye week that certain teams are going to be, able to kind of use that to their advantage a little bit differently. We know kind of how well Andy Reid has done after a bye in his career. Seeing Cincinnati or Buffalo in that spot, they've just never had that with kind of these current rosters and current makeup that they have. So I think that's where definitely the advantage is helping Kansas City, I think, more than anything. And obviously with Cincinnati, it's just tough to see, if they don't win this weekend, a possibility of not getting a home playoff game depending on the coin toss. So that's I think of all the solutions that kind of came forth, I think Cincinnati definitely got kind of the worst end of it. And like I said, I'm not really too concerned about a neutral site AFC Championship game. I think some of these teams, given how well they play, they can win on the road. I think they can win in different environments. So it's not really as big of a factor to me as the bye week.
Yeah, and look, I'm to me, the way I would have done it, and again, this isn't perfect, and it's going to obviously draw the ire, most certainly, of Chiefs fans because it disadvantages them a little bit. But I do feel like it would have been the closest we could have gotten to exactly what would have possibly played out this weekend, and that is run the normal tie-breaking scenarios based on just the loss column. And I think that puts us in a situation where we're entering this week where, in order for Kansas City to get the 1 seed, Buffalo would have had to lose and they would have to win, which more likely than not would have been the scenario had none of this happened on Monday. And of course, for Cincinnati to gain the 1 seed, they would need both Buffalo and Kansas City to lose. And of course, they would have to win. Again, very true to what would have, had a very good chance of transpiring anyways in that situation. And finally, Buffalo just being in a scenario where if they win, they clinch the 1 seed, which was the scenario entering week 17. And that's the biggest thing to me, is where I do think, the Bengals are certainly in this particular solution are getting a very raw deal. But Buffalo's chances of winning and taking the 1 seed drastically dropped from what it was entering week 17, which was they controlled their own destiny, and to what it is now, which is they may not even have a chance for it if the Chiefs win tonight. So by 7:30, 8 o'clock tonight, Buffalo may know that they have no chance at the 1 seed. So again, like I said, these situations, this situation, it's unprecedented. You're not going to find a perfect solution. But I don't know. I feel like the NFL, right on, cue, right on par for what they normally do. I think they might have made the wrong decision.
Yeah, I guess if you wouldn't have gone that route, I think if I would have kind of been the decision maker on this, I guess I first kind of would have started with, if you're able to resume that Bills Bengals game. If they would have been able to do that, I would have almost just pushed the playoffs back a week.
Mm-hmm.
Have week 18 basically go to a week 19, and maybe just the if you kind of keep the Pro Bowl in the same weekend, the top 4 teams players kind of just miss out on that event, and you just kind of move the playoffs back a week. But again, that would have depended on Bengals and Bills resuming. So with that game not resuming, I think that's kind of the solution that I would have went with, is kind of
Mm-hmm.
the tie-breaking procedures that I guess was originally in place, but obviously they opted to not go that route.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you could, I don't want to say easily, because again, it creates other obstacles for the NFL to navigate. That game would have had to been replayed fairly early, possibly by Thursday,
Right.
in order for both teams to kind of regroup for the next round of the playoffs. And you have that bye week in between the conference championship and the Super Bowl, and you can, if push comes to shove, you could lose it. So I'm with you. That would have been, I think, again, the best solution from a football standpoint. I mean, this all is dependent on what the teams wanted to do, the health of Damar Hamlin and everything that came after the fact. So that's not a decision that I think anyone is knocking in any way. I think everyone accepts that that was the right decision to not play that game. I mean, again, the timing of it being on Monday Night Football, maybe if there was an extra day, maybe that could have changed things. I mean, hell, if this would have happened on Thursday and not Monday, you're probably talking about this game getting replayed. So, again, just unfortunate set of circumstances that outside of obviously just the health of and the concern for the player, but again, a perfect storm of extenuating circumstances that all directly relate to the AFC playoff picture, which it's going to be interesting to see how this ultimately plays out, how we're going to look back at it, if say the Chiefs win today and they get the 1 seed and they go on to win the Super Bowl, there are going to be people that say, well, they only won it because of this or because of that, or Buffalo's could possibly go on and win it, and or the Bengals may get knocked out early because they didn't get a home playoff game or whatever the situation. And this story, these topics aren't going to be going away anytime soon, and it's probably going to be a huge topic of conversation in the off season. But again, everyone knew going into this that there was no perfect solution, and in any way you would have gone, and even if you went by the letter of the law, and just like every NFL rule book or rule, there's a lot of gray area and there's a lot of room for interpretation, especially by the commissioner. So nothing is black and white in the NFL. We should know this by the NFL catch rules. So even if they went by the just purely winning percentage route, which a lot of people have pointed out, even that would have been a great solution. I mean, there's problems with everything that we would have put out or we would have figured out. Again, even in the one that I suggested, which I think is a fairly good one. I'm a tad bit biased. The Chiefs essentially lose a win. Now, again, we can argue what's fair and what's not fair. Like, yeah, the Chiefs lose that win that they obviously earned, but is that more of a factor than the Bills and Bengals not even having that opportunity? And then on top of that, add in and this is the other layer. There's so many layers to this, Braden. The Chiefs lost to both of these teams. So it's not like this Chiefs team went out and beat both of them. And, that might have been a different conversation. And at the end of the day, you're like, okay, well, yeah, maybe this helps the Chiefs a little bit, but they still went out and beat them this season. They probably deserve to be that 1 seed. I think there's a very legitimate argument that, having lost to both of these teams, this is a relatively nice advantage for the Chiefs in this situation. But again, at the end of the day, nothing's perfect. And there was going to be no good solution to any of this. So I do not envy the people that were in charge of making this decision. Let's just put it that way. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the biggest thing, I guess, with the advantages. I think in these AFC playoffs, even if you didn't have the circumstances that occurred, it was going to be a tough AFC playoff field regardless. So I think that's where Kansas City gets the biggest advantages. If they get the bye, they have one less round to go, to get to the Super Bowl. But they definitely got to start playing better. And I think that, certainly Buffalo, Cincinnati, I think are going to have their advantages against other teams. But I don't think any AFC team is necessarily unbeatable in these playoffs. So I think that's where, if you're talking about disadvantages for the Bills and the Bengals, that's where I think it's going to be, looked upon the most if the Chiefs do in fact get that bye.
Well, it's all right because we'll all have egg on our face come middle of January when it's the Jaguars and the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. So in Jacksonville of all places. So all right, let's shift gears. Let's get into our picks because we do have a lot of games to pick, including that Kansas City game, and that's where we're really going to start here. Heading to Las Vegas, Game 2 of the Jarrett Stidham era in Las Vegas. He had a nice statistical game and a loss last week. Both the Chiefs and the Raiders do not like each other, so I anticipate a very I don't know, chippy game, a very a lot of in your face shouting type of stuff, and maybe you don't want to have too many players mic'd up in this situation. Let's just put it that way. I would like to see, in terms of just seeing this AFC pitcher even further get messed up and kind of add some suspense to going into Sunday. I would like to see the Chiefs lose just to again add that layer of suspense. But I got them winning in Vegas because at the end of the day, Vegas may be able to put up some points. This is likely going to be another one of those games like we predicted last week, where it's like they're going to win this game, but it's going to be a far more tense than it should be. I think this is exactly what's going to happen today, but ultimately Kansas City is going to win and lock up that 1 seed.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I don't think the Chiefs will cover. I think they're favored by 9.5. So unless the defense can really hold down Stidham, but Devontae Adams has been on a roll, and I think last week had the second most yards in a single game he's had this season. Didn't have a lot of catches against the Chiefs the first time, but a couple of long ones. I think totaled 124 yards. So staying on top of him, that's kind of where my mind's going to go to immediately in this one. But I think the Chiefs and Mahomes will find a way to pull it out.
All right, next we have Jacksonville hosting Tennessee, and I kind of mentioned it just a moment ago. Maybe we get a Jacksonville and New England AFC Championship game. That might be a little too fan speak from my point of view, but I do like Jacksonville in this game against Tennessee. I mean, the Titans are a team that's just they've really fallen off the map here the second half of the season, and for a lot of obvious reasons: injuries, subpar quarterback play, injuries to the quarterback, and really kind of a overall lack of talent. When you trade AJ Brown in the offseason, you're not going to get better. And certainly the team that got him got much better. So at the end, I think Jacksonville is playing some really good football right now. I don't think they're a Super Bowl bound team, but they're definitely they definitely have taken a lot of steps in the right direction, and this is going to be the next one. So Jacksonville by a good margin, I think 7-10 points.
I got Jacksonville as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see just how Mike Vrabel kind of attacks this roster. I know there's been already some buzz about Malik Willis' long-term future there, and just how excited Vrabel was for that pick or not excited. So I think with the quarterback situation there, I think they're getting Derrick Henry back, but even with that, I think the quarterback situation is going to be kind of that final nail in the coffin. So I think Jacksonville wins this division.
All right. The first Buccaneers game of the season where Bucs fans can just relax. It's not going to be tense. It's not going to be live or die. They've locked up the division. They are going to be in the playoffs. They are very likely going to be playing the Cowboys. However, that's not to say this is not an important game for the Buccaneers, because just because they played very well last week doesn't mean all their problems are gone, and they're going to have to string together some good football here starting this week, or at least continuing this week off of last week. And I think they do that against Atlanta. Plus, look, Tom Brady hasn't had a losing season since he was a freshman in high school. Winning today would assure that that streak continues. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could reach the 5,000 yard mark for the second year in a row with a 300, I believe it's like 380 yards he would need today to hit that mark, which something that's kind of gone a little unspoken just because of, the Buccaneers struggles throughout much of the season. But he's still right up there in terms of passing yards. Him and Mahomes have kind of separated themselves in that sense. And yeah, I think he's going to have a good game, as well as the rest of these guys. Maybe Julio Jones has a big breakout game in Atlanta. You never know.
Yeah, I think I don't really have too much to add. Plus, it is Brady against the Falcons, so it's just kind of that extra history there that he just kind of owns them. Seems like any way possible, no matter the circumstances. So it's like you said, you want to see them continue that. It seems like it was a definite kind of incentive to kind of get Mike Evans going. Of course, last week, couple of deep shots. So we'll see if he can kind of get going again this week. I think the Bucs will find a way to win, though.
Yeah, and then that's obviously a great sign for moving forward because they look like, we talked about for 16 weeks how they just haven't seemed like they were on the same page. Well, they were very much on the same page last week, and I think a lot of that had to do with making it a point to get the ball downfield and get the ball to Mike Evans. So, all right, next we have the Patriots at Buffalo. Uh, this game could really go one of two ways, and there's no way to detach from what happened last week with Buffalo, and excuse me, certainly the the players' minds are not going to be off of their teammate, but with the encouraging news this week, that certainly makes the situation a little bit easier for them to manage or manage during the game. But I don't know if this is going to be an emotional high or an emotional low for Buffalo. It could really go one of two ways, and sometimes it might even depend on the outcome of today's game with Kansas City.
Right.
Um, I like Buffalo in this game, but it honestly, I maybe part of me is really trying not to be a homer to take the Patriots, but that might even be a fairly smart pick because obviously the Patriots are playing for a chance to make the playoffs. They are a win and in situation. Buffalo, obviously, like I said, could be going into the game having not the one seed as a something, but obviously looking to win that or solidify that second seed may not obviously have that same type of energy, or it just could be an emotional overload for a team that's gone through so much the last 6 days. So I like Buffalo, but again, like I said, this game could go really either way.
Yeah, and I think there's just a lot of things that you've seen some encouraging signs from New England as well. I think Mac Jones has kind of quietly played, really good football the last few weeks, and that's something that's going to be just kind of interesting to see in a secondary that I think they're getting Christian Benford back in Buffalo. So you obviously lose Damar Hamlin, but seems like they're getting more well rounded there in terms of health. So just kind of a lot of matchups that I think could go either way, but ultimately, I think just being at home is another reason I think that I had to go with the Bills in this one. Their fans obviously legendary with kind of supporting the community and obviously with what happened with the situation Monday night. I think that's gonna give Buffalo maybe a little bit of a boost. So I'll go with the Bills.
All right, next we have Minnesota at Chicago. Minnesota, the funny thing is, we talked about Tampa. We'll talk about Green Bay in a little bit. We have Minnesota here. We've spent 90% of the season talking about the NFC powerhouse teams, the Eagles, the Vikings, and obviously the 49ers. But the funny thing is like it ultimately may come down to the Packers and the Buccaneers and perhaps even the 49ers. If the Packers can get in, obviously we know the Bucks are already in because Minnesota, we've been hesitant to call a huge or a solid Super Bowl contender because whether it's a misconception or not, there's this belief that Minnesota and particularly Kirk Cousins is just not the type of player to elevate when the spotlight shines its brightest. And, there's a lot of examples of that situation. So it's not completely unfounded. The last couple of weeks, and look, that comeback was wonderful, and they're going to have highlights of that in Minnesota Vikings, Hall of Fame or whatever they have, Ring of Honor. But it could potentially be blinding us from this team just being kind of a facade. And by that I mean they've already set the record for most one score wins. Now that could be a sign of a great team that's always in it, or a sign of a team that just has been on the better side of fortune this season than most. And the reality of it is that's not sustainable. So look, I like Minnesota in this game against Chicago, a team that's fighting for the number one overall pick. But I'm really, really starting to question their long-term playoff viability. And like I said, at the end of the day, and we'll talk about the Eagles here in a little bit, at the end of the day, the tide may be shifting to kind of the two old guys in San Francisco. So
Yeah, I think there's not necessarily a carbon copy, but the Vikings kind of remind me a little bit of the 2018 Chiefs, where I think their defense is averaging like nearly 400 yards allowed per game, or maybe over that. And then you got some of the offensive stats that are just kind of very unsustainable, I think, going into future seasons. So I think Minnesota's kind of in that spot where I think any playoff game there's going to be challenges, and I think it's very likely they play the Giants again, and that was already a tight game before. So I think they take care of business this time around, but I don't know if it'll be very safe to say this one's even a 2-score win.
Yeah, look, this may be their last win of the season. That would not surprise me, and you talk about the Giants. The Giants, they've been playing better football. They kind of hit a little bit of a bump in the middle of the road, but the last couple of weeks, they've been playing a lot better football. And really, we know the playoffs, especially in the NFL, it's not about what you did in September, October, November. It's really about what you're doing in the moment. And, if you're going to ask me who's going to win a game between Minnesota and the Giants, probably going to pick the Giants. And to your point about the Chiefs, fortunately for the Chiefs, they had an all-time elite offense to fall back on. Minnesota,
Right.
they have a lot of really good players, but they don't have that quarterback and they don't have that killer instinct on offense. So, anyways, Baltimore at Cincinnati. Again, Cincinnati, we've spent a lot of time talking about because of the AFC playoff scenarios. But I like them at home here. I think they're going to rebound against a Baltimore team that's going to be very likely without Lamar Jackson. And we know they're just not the same team without Lamar Jackson. So give me Cincinnati.
Yeah, it kind of like Buffalo. It'll be hard to know exactly how Cincinnati comes out in this one, but I think they'll have a little bit, extra motivation, of course, knowing what happened with those playoff scenarios and the proposal that was passed. So I think that'll incentivize them enough, especially against a Baltimore team that already beat them once this season. So kind of just the easy motivating factors there, and going with the Bengals here.
All right, next we have Houston at Indianapolis. Houston, the other team vying for that number 1 overall seed. They're a lose and, get it situation. Look, I'll take Houston. I'm sorry, I'll take Indianapolis in this one because I do think they're slightly better. And, for Jeff Saturday, at least he can start and end his first taste of NFL head coaching with a win. So I like Indy at home and what I believe is probably going to be a pretty sloppy, unentertaining game.
I almost went Houston, but I think there's part of the organization that's maybe just wanting to keep the number 1
Yeah,
pick.
they're so close, right? It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah,
what's going to change if you win this game, really, outside of losing that pick? So
right, unless Lovie Smith's a one and done, and maybe he just wants to make things kind of wonky for the next regime. That's like the only thing I can think of. But I think Lovie's probably going to earn himself a second season. So in the end, I'll go with Indianapolis.
Next, we have the Jets at Miami. Look, the Miami. This is a season that had so many highs, and it's incredible that we're at such a low right now. Having lost 5 in a row, now looking like a team that is going to have a lot of questions at quarterback moving forward. They have a lot of questions going into this weekend, let alone for the future. There's been some doubt with Mike McDaniel. I don't think that's necessarily warranted, and I'm not like, the biggest pom-pom waiver for Mike McDaniel. I kind of tend to, when everyone's, jumping early on someone, I kind of tend to ease back and let it play out for itself because, again, we don't really know, especially when they don't coach, and you can't really base a coach's ability off his, ability to be friendly with the media. That's just not how it works. You have to actually show it on the football field. He struggled at times this year. Obviously, the quarterback has struggled, and this team has really spiraled out of control, and I don't think it's going to stop. I think they lose this game against the Jets, and you do have a lot of questions moving forward after losing 6 games to miss out on the season. And like I said, that guy up in Tampa, that name's going to be floating around for a lot of teams, including the Dolphins and including the Raiders. So as soon as this season's over for the Dolphins, that's where the attention's probably going to go, and we'll see how that plays out. But this week, I think the Jets are going to do just enough to win this game.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of good reasons, maybe other than just the veteran experience of the 2 quarterbacks favoring the Jets between Flacco and Skylar Thompson. Just haven't really seen enough of Skylar Thompson having success, and and putting up scoring drives. So that's maybe the best reason I can point to. And other than Miami, just not being able to get out of this late season nosedive. So Jets win this one for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's just I just don't see a way how they dig themselves out of it. Especially again going to a third string quarterback at this point.
Yeah.
All right, next we have Carolina at New Orleans. Um, Again, a game that really could have been a lot more interesting had Carolina won last week, but alas, the Buccaneers held on, and they are now the NFC South champions. And this game really means nothing. I did pick New Orleans, however, because they are at home. Both teams really are heading into an offseason of a lot of questions, not only at head coach, but at quarterback and everywhere in between. So I like New Orleans here, but like I said, neither team is really winning heading into the offseason.
Yeah, I went with New Orleans as well. Again, kind of not a lot of great reasons. I think for Carolina, there could also be some of that same thing in the Houston building, maybe not to the same extent, but trying to just help themselves at this point now that they didn't win the division, help themselves in the first round draft order. And of course, Saints don't have a first round pick right now. So the draft positioning could definitely be more meaningful to Carolina at this point. So went with the Saints.
All right, next we have Cleveland heading to Pittsburgh. I like Pittsburgh at home. I think, Cleveland this season hasn't obviously gone the way it had, they had hoped. Certainly not since Deshaun Watson has arrived. He's played a little bit better, but he's got a long way to go before he's back to where he's at. And I don't think it's going to happen against a pretty good Pittsburgh defense. So give me Pittsburgh at home.
I went with Pittsburgh as well, and just based on my other picks, I think I'm just kind of rooting to see Mike Tomlin keep that streak alive of not having a losing season and sneaking their way into the playoffs, similar to how they did last year. Maybe a little bit more hot at the end of this season than last year, but I think they're going to find a way to get into the playoffs this time.
All right, next we have the Chargers heading to Denver. The Chargers have been playing very much better as of late, and could be a very tough out for any team in the AFC. Because they're going to end up playing one of the higher seeds more than likely, whether it's Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati. It doesn't matter. They're going to end up playing one of them. I like them certainly against Denver here. I mean, unless Denver's playing Kansas City, they can't do anything on offense. So in this case, I'll take the Chargers.
Yeah, I'll take the Chargers as well. I know there's been talks of them maybe resting some guys after depending what happens with the Baltimore Cincinnati game, but I think regardless they'll find a way to keep kind of Denver's misery going as they enter the offseason. So Chargers win for me.
All right, next we have Philadelphia hosting the Giants. Like I said earlier, the Giants are playing some really good football, and I gotta assume that Jalen Hurts is going to play this week for the Eagles, and in which case I think that's going to be enough to get them out of their mini tailspin here. However, this is a team that I think desperately, as good as they are. I mean, we've talked all season about how they've been so well balanced on both sides of the ball, but that only really works when you have a really good quarterback. And obviously, before any of this injury stuff, Jalen Hurts was a lot of people's front runner for MVP. And I think his value to the Eagles' success has never been more apparent than what we've seen the last couple of weeks. So given the fact that he's going to play, or at least I think he's going to play this week, I like the Eagles. But if he's not relatively healthy, I would have a lot of concern for them going into the playoffs, and you would really be thanking whatever that they are the number one seed, or you assume they're the number one seed. So Philadelphia, but the Giants are going to give them quite a bit this week.
Yeah, I think I have to go with the Eagles just because I think there's a little bit more to play for them. Obviously, Giants will be locked into the six. So even if they let their starters kind of play most of this game, I think Philly's just gonna realize what the situation kind of holds for them, and want that bye in that home field. So that's why I got to go with Philadelphia here.
All right, next we have the Rams at Seattle, a once great matchup. Now is just kind of a Seattle obviously is still in the NFC playoff picture, but they're not playing at the level that they were earlier in the season. Early in the season, we were talking about Geno Smith as an MVP candidate and the Seahawks as a team that could be not only the best team in the NFC West, but maybe in the NFC. But that just really hasn't panned out. I do think that they win this week because, again, the Rams are one of the worst teams in the league this year, and they've played better with Baker Mayfield because it's a little bit more consistent. But at the end of the day, I think Seattle's going to win this one at home.
Kind of went with a shot in the dark here with the Rams upset. I don't know if it's Baker Mayfield maybe just kind of pulling off some late magic and kind of throwing Seattle's season into a wrench here. But just kind of taking a shot in the dark and hoping Sunday night maybe means a little bit more than what it could if it's the other way around. So went with the Rams upset here.
Next, another NFC West battle. Arizona heading to San Francisco. Two teams that are probably at the exact opposite ends of the NFL talent and ability spectrum. San Francisco looks like, we talked earlier about the best teams in the NFC, and their team that has been consistently mentioned among that group. And I think it's a very legitimate reason because, well, they're very good and haven't really seemed to have lost much with Brock Purdy under center. And now you're getting Deebo Samuel back this week, and you would hope for the playoffs. I like them very comfortably in this game against Arizona, who talk about teams that have questions heading into the offseason. Arizona's going to have a lot of questions at a lot of different areas and big areas. So San Francisco will win, and Arizona will head home with their heads hung low.
Yeah, not a whole lot to add there. I think this is one of the few games where I do have 100% confidence taking San Francisco. I could very well be the last game of Cliff Kingsbury as Cardinals head coach, and see who they kind of bring in there next season at quarterback if Kyler Murray misses the kind of time we're kind of expecting. So it seems like the end of an era type of game for the Cardinals before a lot of massive changes, and I think 49ers win pretty comfortably.
Next, we have Dallas at Washington. Obviously, Washington eliminated last week, unbeknownst to Ron Rivera, who did not know. Dallas, again, they're a good team. They're not getting elite quarterback play from Dak Prescott, and their reward for making the playoffs is likely going to face a guy that they've never beaten in the last 20 years. So, Cowboys fans, enjoy this win. Because, quite frankly, regardless of if it's the Buccaneers or another NFC team, I cannot have a lot of confidence in Dallas when, again, you're turning the ball over as much as they have, and they've looked so inconsistent so late this season. It's very concerning, and certainly one that feels like they're not long for the playoffs here. And like I said, if they end up running into the Buccaneers, and you get the Buccaneers of last week, where they actually create turnovers on defense and can move the ball in offense, not a chance in the world I would ever consider taking the Cowboys in the game, despite how this regular season played out. So I say this to say I like Dallas in this game, but much like Minnesota, this may be their very last win of the season, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is also a gift getting Sam Howell's first start against this kind of defense as well. So we'll see what Washington does after the year with the quarterback situation, if it's Howell's moving forward or not. But yeah, I think that's gonna lead to a kind of a comfortable win for Dallas here. So just not, like you said, not a lot of confidence in their offense though going into the playoffs.
All right, we could be seeing a matchup depending on how things unfold, and on Monday night or Sunday night, Monday night, whatever it is. See it unfold with the Green Bay Packers hosting the Detroit Lions. The Packers are in a situation where they win and they're in the playoffs. It's remarkable to think that this team at 4-8, and as much as like I talked about earlier about it possibly being to two old guys and how funny it would be if it ultimately was the Buccaneers and the Packers in the NFC Championship game, I do think the Packers bubble does burst here against the Lions, because the Lions have been, they're not a, relative to what the Lions have been, they're a great Lions team.
Mm-hmm.
relative to the landscape of the NFL, they're among the many mediocre teams that we're seeing across this league, and mediocrity in the NFL is pretty darn close to the elites in this league. There's not a big gap. We've talked about that before. So I say that to say I like the Lions in this game on the road because ultimately I think their offense is just far more potent, and Green Bay's defense at times is really good, but I think they're not going to be able to contain the Lions offense, and I don't think the Packers offense is capable of putting up in a shootout, so to speak. So unfortunately for the Packers, they will not be making the playoffs, and it's going to be at the hands of the Lions.
Yeah, I kind of I remember one of the Studs and Duds episodes we did. I kind of said the Packers were cooked. So I gotta apologize to Aaron Rodgers for prematurely saying that, but I still went with the Lions here just because I just kind of want to root for them to make the playoffs with my Rams upset pick earlier, and this is just kind of a season that I think they have everything kind of cooking at the right time. I know they had that dud against Carolina, but they got both James Houston and Aiden Hutchinson producing in the sack department, and it just seems like Jared Goff has given himself kind of an extended leash, maybe going into next season as the Lions quarterback. So I just think a lot more positives despite what Green Bay's been able to do. I like Detroit a little bit more here, so kind of more of rooting for them to get in than maybe 100% believing in it. But hopefully Sunday night means something for both teams going into that game.
Yeah, and that's what we're kind of hoping for too. I picked Seattle, but I'm certainly rooting for a Seattle loss here to like I said, add that wrinkle of suspense and that layer of suspense. So thank you everyone for tuning in. That's going to do it for us here in the regular season. We will be back obviously starting next week to dissect the playoff matchups because hey, it's playoff season and it's the best time of the year. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. Or Sunday if you're watching this on Sunday, and if that's the case, don't hold it against us if we picked Saturday night's games wrong. Just kind of go with it. But if you're watching Saturday, Sunday, next week, last week somehow, thank you very much. And of course, we look forward to talking to you all next week. So give us a follow on Twitter at Full Press NFL, and of course, go over to fullpresscoverage.com to check out everything going on and happening over there. So thank you everyone, and enjoy your Saturday and Sunday.